Hey everybody, so I've been thinking about what's happening with the protests and the Black Lives Matter, and I've come to the conclusion that I really don't have anything to say about that. Like, what do I know about what it's like to be black in Canada, right? There's 3.3% of the population in Canada is black, apparently. That's according to CMHC when they were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and that's what they said. So they're a government entity, they'd know. So I don't know anything about that, right? So I figured that what I can talk about, though, is empathy and how it's different than sympathy. And I think that if people would use empathy, they could really understand what people in different groups go through. And I think that it's also a good tool for business, right? For sales. If you can use empathy to understand how people think and why, you can figure out their spending or their purchasing behavior, right? So I think it's a very valuable tool. Now, I say this because if you look at the definition of empathy, I'll just bring it up here. It is I don't know if that's being recorded. It is the ability to share someone else's feelings or experiences by imagining what it would be like to be in that person's situation. So empathy, I kind of thought of it before as just a soft skill that you have or you don't have, and you're born with it, but it's not. It's like a thought experiment. Like, you literally have to sit there, look at that person's life, and imagine yourself in their childhood, in their work experience, and what they go through on a daily basis, and imagine how you would feel if you were doing that, right? So I feel like a lot of us are just too lazy to go through that much effort, right? It's easy just to judge people and say, oh, well, you're this and you're that. You know, you're a liberal, you're a conservative, whatever. But I think, and then if you think about it, well, say you don't know what someone in a minority community goes through, you just can't imagine that. Well, perhaps you could just ask them, and you get their feedback, and then you could imagine what it's like to go through that yourself. You know, I think that could work. And then just to kind of prove the point that empathy is something that you can develop, and I think it's worthwhile working on, is I found a Psychology Today article called "Can Empathy Be Taught?" And in this article, it actually talks about doctors that they use empathy training quite a bit in their practice. I guess physicians, because, well, this article is saying anyway that essentially it's so factual based that, you know, you can kind of disconnect the diagnosis from how it makes the person feel, right? So, yeah, you have cancer. That's really too bad, but that's the fact. That's what you have, and your life expectancy is 1 year to a year and a half, right? So physicians do take empathy training, and they use it in their practices. So, you know, I think that if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for all of us. And I think that, you know, even for me being somewhat politically minded, that shifts as I get older, I find. But, you know, I talk to people that have very different views than I do. I try to think about, well, why do they have that view? You know, like, let me understand. Let me try to get into your shoes to understand why you're thinking that. It takes a lot more mental energy, but I think it makes for a much better conversation. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Take care, everyone. Bye.